German engineering often carries a reputation for absolute precision. Yet anyone who has spent time wrenching on cars understands that this reputation cuts both ways. When Audi gets it right, they build over-engineered masterpieces, capable of hitting 500,000 miles with nothing but oil changes. But when they get it wrong, the failure isn't just a simple breakdown. You end up with complex, catastrophic mechanical disasters that cost a fortune to fix. There is almost no middle ground with these machines. You are either driving a tank or a ticking time bomb. We are going to examine the specific engine codes that keep mechanics in business, alongside the ones that turn owners into lifelong fans. This isn't about general reliability ratings, but rather the specific mechanical failures that plague the worst engines, ranging from piston ring designs that turn motors into oil burners, to timing chain tensioners that act like grenades. On the flip side, we will look at the redemption stories where Audi learned from their mistakes to build bulletproof power plants that enthusiasts hunt for on the used market. To understand why some Audis hold their value while others plummet, you have to look under the hood. So let's start with the three engines that have likely drained more savings accounts than any casino in Las Vegas. First on the list of engines to avoid is the 2.0 TDI EA189, which you likely know better as the mechanical heart of the infamous Dieselgate scandal. This four-cylinder diesel served as the workhorse for the A3, A4, Q5, and TT between 2008 and 2015, promising a perfect mix of massive torque and hybrid rivaling fuel economy. While the emissions-cheating software grabbed all the headlines, the mechanical reality of this engine creates a genuine headache for owners who plan to keep their cars past the warranty period. The primary failure point is the exhaust gas recirculation valve, because the system pumps a massive amount of exhaust soot back into the intake to meet emission standards. This causes the valve mechanism to clog with carbon deposits and oil vapor until it sticks, resulting in rough idling and a check engine light that usually signals a repair bill between $800 and $1,200. The situation gets worse with the diesel particulate filter, because these units rely on high heat to burn off soot, which means short city commutes eventually choke the engine and force a replacement, costing upwards of $2,000. You also have to worry about the piezoelectric injectors, because the insulation on the solenoids tends to break down around the 80,000 mile mark to cause short circuits. Since the ECU often shuts down the engine completely to protect itself when just one fails, you are looking at $400 per injector for a total repair bill that can easily hit $5,000, which is often more than the residual value of the vehicle itself. If the EA189 was an emissions disaster, the next engine on our list is a pure mechanical tragedy defined by the EA888 Generation 1 and Generation 2 families. This 2.0 TFSI unit was found everywhere in gasoline models like the A4, A5, and Q5 from 2009 to 2014, and while Audi marketed it as a high-efficiency power plant, mechanics simply know it as the oil guzzler. The engineering flaw here is almost hard to believe because Audi used piston rings with oil drain holes that were far too small. As carbon builds up, these tiny holes clog and prevent oil from scraping off the cylinder walls, which forces that oil to burn in the combustion chamber at a rate of a quart every 1,000 miles. I have seen extreme cases where it burns a quart every 300 miles, and the only fix involves tearing down the engine to install redesigned pistons for $3,000 to $5,000. Oil consumption is just an annoyance compared to the timing chain tensioner failure, where the original ratchet mechanism loses tension without warning and allows the chain to skip a tooth. The pistons smash into the valves instantly upon startup, leaving you with a $6,000 to $8,000 repair bill for a new engine, a fragile water pump, and a screaming PCV system that makes this engine a financial liability from the moment you drive it off the lot. The final entry on our worst list is an older unit that carries a reputation that still haunts Audi mechanics today, and that is the 2.7-liter twin-turbo V6 bearing the engine code APB. You found this engine in the B5 generation S4, the A6, and the original All-Road between 1998 and 2003, where it delivered spectacular performance that required a level of maintenance commitment bordering on masochism. The fatal flaw of the 2.7T is simply packaging, because Audi shoehorned a V6 with two turbos into an engine bay designed for a four-cylinder. The K03 turbochargers are buried deep down by the firewall, where they tend to fail around 100,000 miles, and replacing them requires removing the entire engine from the car. You are looking at 20 to 30 hours of labor just to access the broken parts, and the headaches continue with the timing belt system. Since this is an interference engine, the heads are toast if that belt snaps, so smart owners ignore the factory 75,000 mile suggestion and change it at 60,000 instead. You also have to deal with valve cover gaskets that leak oil directly onto the hot exhaust manifolds to fill the cabin with smoke, while the auxiliary coolant pump buried under the intake manifold turns the engine valley into a coolant swimming pool. If hearing about engine out services for a simple turbo swap makes your wallet hurt just thinking about it, do me a favor and hit that like button so the algorithm can warn other drivers before they walk blindly into these financial traps. If you want to make sure your next car isn't a mechanic's retirement fund, consider subscribing as we shift gears to the good news. It would be unfair to characterize all Audi engineering based on those three disasters, because the company has also produced some of the finest internal combustion engines in history. These are the power plants that earned Audi its premium status by combining durability with performance in a way few other manufacturers can match. The first engine on our best list is the modern classic 2.5-liter TFSI inline 5, specifically the EA855 Evo, found in the RS3 and the TTRS. This engine serves as a direct spiritual successor to the legendary 5 cylinders that dominated Group B rallying in the 1980s. But the inline 5 configuration offers more than just nostalgia. It provides a unique firing order that creates a perfect compromise between the smoothness of a straight 6 and the compact size of a 4-cylinder. The EA85 Evo is massively overbuilt from a reliability standpoint, with an incredibly rigid block and a forged steel crankshaft. While it produces around 400 horsepower in stock form, we see tuners pushing these engines to 500 or 600 horsepower with relatively minor modifications because the factory safety margins are huge. Regular maintenance involves standard oil and spark plug changes, and we see reports of RS3s hitting 200,000 miles with the original turbo and engine internals untouched. This is a rare example of a high-performance engine that produces an aggressive exhaust note without punishing you for using it as a daily driver. Going back a few years reveals the engine widely considered the sweet spot of the modern era for Audi, which is the 1.8T 20-valve AEB variant, produced from roughly 2002 to 2006. This engine powered the A4, the first-generation TT, and the Passat during a time when technology was advanced enough to be efficient, but simple enough to be fixed in a home garage. The 20-valve designation refers to a sophisticated setup with 3 intake valves and 2 exhaust valves per cylinder that sits on top of a virtually indestructible cast iron block. Unlike the later 2.0 TFSI we discussed earlier, the 1.8T avoids chronic oil consumption issues and fragile timing chains by using a predictable timing belt system that needs changing every 60,000 miles. Audi also over-engineered the coolant flow, so these engines rarely suffer from the heat soak or head gasket failures that kill other turbocharged engines of this vintage. Maintenance remains cheap because parts are available everywhere, and while you might lose a $50 coil pack here or there, the core mechanicals are rock solid enough to drive across the country with 150,000 miles on the clock. Our third pick for the best engines represents the redemption arc for the diesel reputation at Audi, and that is the 2.0 TDI EA288 Gen 3, produced from 2015 onwards. After the financial nightmare of Dieselgate, Audi had to prove they could build a clean diesel that actually worked, so they redesigned the entire emissions architecture for this new generation. The EGR system was re-engineered to operate at different temperatures to drastically reduce clogging issues, while the improved regeneration logic for the diesel particulate filter makes it much more tolerant of varied driving styles. Owners of these engines regularly see 45 to 50 miles per gallon on the highway because the fuel system is far less prone to the injector failures that plagued the previous generation. We are seeing these engines cross the 180,000 mile mark with nothing more than routine fluid changes, which proves that modern diesels can be reliable without cheating the system. If you want a long-distance highway cruiser, an Audi equipped with the EA288 Gen 3 remains one of the smartest purchases you can make. Finally, we have to talk about the legend that built the reputation of the TDI badge before everything went wrong, specifically the 1.9 TDI BKE and AFN variants produced from 1996 to 2010. This engine is the automotive equivalent of a hammer because it is simple, effective, and nearly impossible to break, thanks to an era before complex emission systems choked diesel performance. It uses a cast iron block with a robust injection system that lacks delicate petro injectors, AdBlue systems, or the endless sensors that tend to fail on modern cars. It is not fast by modern standards and sounds like a tractor on a cold morning, but we routinely see these engines run for 300,000 miles or even push past 500,000. The only real maintenance items are the timing belt and the occasional mass airflow sensor, because the low-stress turbochargers rarely fail if you keep up with oil changes. It is the kind of reliability that manufacturers simply do not offer anymore. So if you find a clean A4 or Golf with the 1.9 TDI, you are buying a car that will likely outlive you. This situation essentially creates two different Audis for the potential buyer. On one hand, you have financial traps like the 2.0 TDI EA189 with its clogged EGRs, the oil-drinking 2.0 TFSI, and the 2.7T that requires an engine-out service for a turbo swap. These are cars that look great on a used lot, but act like a slow leak on your bank account. On the other hand, you have icons like the rally-bred 2.5 TFSI, the balanced 1.8T 20-valve, the redeemed 2.0 TDI EA288, and the unkillable 1.9 TDI. The difference between owning a dream car and a nightmare often comes down to that 3 or 4-digit engine code stamped on the block, so you have to check the service history and buy the engine rather than just the badge. Which of these engines have you dealt with personally? Did you get one of the bulletproof million milers, or did you get stuck with an oil-burning money pit? Drop your story in the comments below because I read them all and I am genuinely curious to see the mileage you guys are getting. And make sure you are subscribed with notifications on for more deep dives into the mechanical reality of German cars.